Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Hayemi Meseches MEILAH Daf Gimel. Perhaps because of its smallness and size, we'll just merge together. We'll combine Daf Gimel, which leads straight into Daf Daled, same topic of discussion, all the way over to Daf Daled Amud Beis. Okay, so let's just refresh ourselves. We had a discussion of machlokes between Rabbah and Rav Yosef in the following instance. Actually, so it's the first case now in Mishnah. According to Rashi, the first case is where the starting point of the carbon went awry, so he did it in the wrong location. It's kachay kadashim, like an oila, which is meant to be shechted, and whose blood is meant to be collected in the tzafin, in the north side of the Azara. Instead, he did it b'darim. So, the starting point was done inappropriately. According to Tosfos, we're speaking specifically about the shechita. Okay, let's just focus on the shechita. Shechita b'dar. What's the status of the carbon? Of course, it's pasul. The question, however, will be: does it have some element of kedushas hakrava? Is it considered as though it did experience some element of hakrava experience to the extent that if it's already on the mizbech im all? Typically, we know that carbon materials, which are found on the mizbech is like a magnet; it absorbs materials, even if they happen to be unfit. In most cases, it absorbs them, which means to say it gets enveloped into the mizbech environment and stays there. We learn it from a pasuk back in Maseches Vachim. What about this material, this kachay kadashim, that was started off b'darim? Shall we say, look, it's like it just died on you. There was no hakrava element that it experienced. That's Rava's opinion. In which case he says, in our Torah there isn't even any MEILAH. The MEILAH expires. Because, as we learned yesterday, MEILAH only pertains to something which has kachay Hashem identity. As opposed, let's just recap, as opposed if it's fully processed properly. So a carbon which had the four elements of akrava done to it, the shechita, the kabbalah, the halacha, and the zrika, applying the blood of the mizbeach, was done properly. That's a culmination of the akrava system. It's called nasis mitzvasai, and the kachay Hashem status expires because it's now fit for kohanim. It has shas hetel kohanim, although it's kadosh. If you eat it, you have a mitzvah of eating karbanis, but the MEILAH element is no longer there, except if it's a carbon oila, in which case it has to be burnt on the mizbeach until it becomes ashes. MEILAH is still active, but typically, until the successful zrika happens, there's MEILAH, past which there is not. On the other hand, we spoke about an animal that just a carbon that just dies on you. Of course, there's no MEILAH. It has no value whatsoever. It didn't have a krava. It doesn't have any value. You can't be paided. You bury it, so it has no MEILAH. But here we have something in between. It didn't actually die. It had something done to it. Something which is reminiscent of a hakrava. In fact, we learned yesterday, even shechita b'darim, as bad as it is, it's not fitting for this particular carbon, but you can do shechita b'darim on other carbonas like kachim kalam, shlamim, etc. So do we say that it did sort of enter the process, it did embark on the hakrava track, in which case, since it's midway in that track, it still has MEILAH, like any other carbon? Or according to Rabbah, no, it's like it died. Shechita b'darim is a non-starter. And in that case, it has no carbon value whatsoever. It's pasul, there's no MEILAH, and Torah only the Rabbanan. Now, what about him? Oh, that's the focal point here. If it's on the mizbeach already, Rabbah says, yeah, just take it off. Rav Yosef says no. He says, it had a shechita. It wasn't the Azara when it was shechta. It was the wrong side. It still was in the confines of the mechitzas Azara. It still relates to a hakrava experience. In which case, sure, it's pasul. But it does relate to the hakrava process. It's not just died. It experienced some hakrava element. So it's considered like a carbon. although it's a carbon puzzle, but still has carbon identity, carbon status, and MEILAH is still active. Okay, so bottom line, what happens in Olu? Rabbi says, Olu yerdu. Rabbi Yosef says, Olu lo yerdu eisvei. We have a kasha, 9 lines from the top on Gimel Med Aleph. Rabbi Yosef asked the question to Rabbi, and it was a build-up question. It was based on 3 Mishnayos, chaining into each other to lead to the conclusion, which actually ends up being a refutation of Rabbi's Shita, that even something which was started off in the wrong place. Here we talk about birds, which have malika instead of shchita, clipping off from the back of the neck. So it happened in the wrong location. We learn in the Mishnayos, it still has sufficient level of kedusha to render it fit for the mizbeach if it's up there already. Likewise, in our case, im alu lo yerdu, it's going to be a kasha on Rabba. It's one Mishnah extracted from the other, and that one extracted from the third one. So basically, it's a build-up to prove his point. First Mishnah says, V'chulan, we're talking about bird karbanos. So we have the oilas ha'oif, we have the chatos bird, chatos ha'oif, which have to be processed in different places on the mizbeach. Some are done on top, some have the malika on the bottom, like the chatos ha'oif on bottom, the oilas ha'oif on top. They're mitzvah, the application of blood. Again, it depends what you are. If it's a chatos, it's down. If it's an oilah, it's on the upper half of the wall of mizbeach. Now, let's say he switched locations. So definitely disqualifies the bird, but it's considered like a bird that just died on you. We know that a bird, a kosher bird that's an avela, is metame, not by way of direct transfer, but if you eat it while you're swallowing it, you become tummy, severely tummy. So what about these so-called dead birds, which had malika but was improperly done? So an improperly applied malika, does that render the bird a nevel to the extent that it's metame? If it had a proper malika, of course it's not metame. That malika is in lieu of shchita. It's machsha the bird, machsha the carbon. But if it's done improperly, the Chulam says the Mishnah, no, although it was not done appropriately, but don't consider it like a nevela. Ein metamen begadim. It's not going to be your clothing when you swallow it. There is MEILAH, because it's kaddish, and since the process was not fully completed, so even if it's a chatas, it will not lose its MEILAH status. We don't consider it like it just died. There is MEILAH, except for a chatas that was processed properly, in which case, like we said before, it becomes permissible, green-lighted for the kaihanim to eat, and loses the MEILAH status. Chutz mechatas oif, a chatas bird she'asal amata kamas chatas oif, which was processed on the bottom half of the mizbeach, the way you meant to do a chatas, l'shem chatas, for the sake of chatas, so it's a successful hakrava, then the MEILAH expires. Okay, what we want to extract from this Mishnah, which is Mishnah number 1 of 3 on our developing kasha here, is that even a malika psula does not render it like an avela. It's not matame beis habliya. We have the next Mishnah, which gives us a label, categorizes it. We have a Mishnah on this, which explains this, so it's the Mishnah following afterwards, which says, Kol shahaya psula b'kodesh. What's the rule? The process on the bird was aborted. It was possible. Is it going to be metame? Sometimes yes, sometimes not. How do we categorize it? Which is basically now organizing and sort of putting in context the previous Mishnah. This is the rule. Kol shahaya psuli b'kodesh. If the psul happened b'kodesh, Rashi learns that happened in the Beis Hamikdash. Tosfos learns that it's a psul which technically can work in a different carbon. In any case, it's a psul which sort of relates to the hakrava process. It's not just a random psul that happened prior to arriving to Beis Hamikdash, like was missing a wing or something. That makes it puzzle unrelated to the hakrava. But if the psuli was b'kodesh, such as the malika that happened in the wrong location, in that case, it's not just a dead bird. It's a carbon which is possible. It's not going to be metame. But if it's a psul which precedes the akrava process, whether in location or in concept, mitame begadim b'sabli, in that case, it's like a bird that died, it's mitame begadim. What do we see from here? If in the previous Mishnah we see that malika in the wrong location is not mitame, apparently it's labeled as psuli b'kodesh, as per the formula in the second Mishnah. Here comes the third Mishnah, which says those items which are psuli b'kodesh, which we now learn applies to a malika in the wrong location. Im alu, if they were put on the mizbech, they don't come down. They get absorbed into the mizbech environment. We have another Mishnah then, which says kol shay psul b'kodesh. Anytime the disqualification is called psul b'kodesh, such as malika in wrong location, im alu, once they're on the mizbech lo yerdu, they don't come down. And in a parallel situation, by a kachuk kedashim animal, the shechita was done b'darai. We assume likewise. It's called psul b'kodesh. If it's up, it stays up. That's a kasha on Rabba who says, bring it down. It's like it died. It's like no. Here we see that it has kedusha. It is considered like it experienced the akrava process to some extent, and it belongs on a mizbeach. It's considered mizbeach material to yufta, the Rabba to yufta. That's a reputation on Rabba. Now, v'had pligi wa Rabba Rav Yosef. This point of discussion with Rabba and Rav Yosef. What to do? What happens when you have a carbon that was nishchat in the wrong place? If it's on the mizbeach, does it stay? Does it come down? So it was point of dispute for them. Point of discussion for Rabbi and Rav Yosef was clear. Pshita li Rabbi Lazar. To him, it wasn't a question. He knew the answer. Dam Rabbi Lazar. Why? Because Rabbi Lazar poses a similar question, which seems to have been based on a solidified position regarding our discussion today. So he asked a more advanced question. So you have an oila at a time in our history when they had private altars, b'masyach, in your backyard, together with a public bama in specific locations like Noiv, Givoin. So you had a choice. You can be magdish your carbon for your private bama or for the public bama. It has different rules, very similar in terms of kedusha, but it has certain rules that only applies to Bama Tzibur, one of which is Safain, the requirement to process it in the Safain. So, let's say it's Eilas Bama Siyachet. It was an Eilah designated for your own private Bama. You brought it into the confines, into the partitions of the public Bama, the public, Mishkan. Does it get upgraded? Or does it keep its former status, which does not require all the additional requirements of the Bama Tzibur? Rashi says Tznufa, Hagasha, Reach Nechayach, all kinds of halachis, Kayin, Klishares, all these are specific to Bama Tzibur. Do they now apply to this one or not? Says Rabbi Lazar, yep, he's all in. Rashi says it's as though it was initially meant for the Bama Tzibur. He gets an upgrade, which includes Shechita B'Tzafin. Now let's say he did not conform to the new rules, to the new standards. He did it b'darin. So we know Kol Tov Mechitz Chol Davar. He's supposed to, but he didn't. Let's say he was unaware, he thought it still has its old former status, which does not need Tzafin. Boy, Rabbi Lazar, now you had a question. He brought it in, and he didn't do it properly. He did it in the Darein. And it's on the Mizbeach, which rings very similar to our discussion until now. A carbon that was Nishchat in Darein, it's on the Mizbeach. Oh, Mal Sheyerd, if it's up, what about bringing it down? Does it belong up there? Do you bring it down? On the one hand, it needs Tzafin. On the other hand, this is not really its natural environment. It wasn't intended for the Bama Tzibur, which requires Tzafin. So how possible it is? I mean, it needs Tzafin, otherwise it's possible, that's a given. But to the extent that take it off the mizbeach, or shall we say, look, it's not as terrible as a regular carbon that was done b'darim because it needed it by its very nature. Here it's not really a natural requirement, it's sort of an added requirement which came later. So there's room to speculate both ways. We're going to see in a minute what the factors are. But bottom line, the fact that he's focusing his question on this unique, unusual case of an imported oila, consequences of doing bedarim, regarding the fact that he's posing the question specifically on this case, which is unique, apparently regarding the basic question of a regular carbon that was done b'tzafin, it was clear to him, one way or the other, either like Rabba, that you remove it from the mizbeach, or like Rabbi, you leave it on the mizbeach. Well, according to Rashi, who says not necessarily so? Maybe it was a double question. It was a question built on the other. Maybe we'll go like Rabbah. Then in a standard case, a regular carbon that was meant for the Beis Hamikdash, it was done b'darim, you take it off the mizbeach. Ad kan lekama Rabbah Hasan. Perhaps Rabbah only applies that point to a standard carbon. If it's up, take it down. When the Beis Hamikdash, the Azara, and consequently the tzafin requirement, is its natural requirement. It's its natural natural mechitzas. It was intended for those mechitzas. Mechitza ketikna. Ketikna means it's its natural intended mechitza. Apostles in that case, if it's done wrongly, it's possible to the extent that it's removed from the mizbeach. But in our case, where these mechitzas aren't this particular carbon's natural mechitzas, it was meant for your backyard. Shalai ketikna apostle perhaps doesn't have that severe effect. So even if we go like Rava in the standard, it's still going to be a question in our case. Alternatively, we can go with Rav Yosef's position. Even according to him, the Amram also Leiterit, who says that in a standard case, an oil that was shechted b'dar, if it's on the mizbeach, it doesn't come off. Let's say we assume that position, you can still consider this to be different. Mechitza ketikna kolta, perhaps only a mechitza which was intended for this carbon. Kolta, it can grab it, it can absorb it. If it's on the mizbeach, it stays there. It's its natural environment. But when it's not really its naturally intended mechitza, such as in this case, the bamas tzibur, it's not really part of the initial programming of the carbon. So perhaps it can't have the same absorption effect to leave it on the mizbeach once there. No, it's removed. Take it, so we leave it on the result. So basically, sure, Blazer asked a more advanced question, but perhaps it was based on a more basic the question, which perhaps even he wasn't really sure of. Because his question could be posed piggyback on Rabba's position and Reis's position as well. Whichever way you hold on the basic, you can still ask the same on the more advanced. Take it, we'll leave it unresolved. Here comes a new circuit. So we already know from the Mishnah that you're kachim. Let's take example like a achatos. MEILAH applies until the hakrava process is finished, until it goes through the 4 primary steps of hakrava, which is shchita, slaughtering the animals, kabbalah, collecting the blood in the kli, halacha, transporting it to the mizbeach, and zrika, applying it on the mizbeach itself. That's the full process. After which there's no MEILAH, because now it's available for the kohanim to eat. And the Kachi Hashem status, which indicates exclusivity to Hashem, that expires. So although it has Kedushas Karm, but the MEILAH element is no longer there. We also learned that if the carbon did undergo the process, which ended up being pasul, the MEILAH still hangs in there, based on the same principle that it's not mutal kohanim. But what about a pigul process? Pigul is unique. So it's where the kohen had a machshava, had an intention to process the carbon, to feed it to the mizbeach, to do the zrika or the haktorah, to eat the kohen. at the wrong eat the carbon at the wrong time, a week later. So if he had that intention consistently throughout all 4 steps, without any other interfering, impediments, halachic impediments, that makes it a full-fledged pigul, meaning he didn't have any other plans of chutzlam kaima or shloish. That renders it pigul to the extent that if one eats the material of that carbon after the zrikas pigul, he's liable to kares, as we learned in the previous Masechta. Now the Gemara, Tosfos explained, the Gemara's Zvachim tells us that pigul isn't just a negative. It's very negative, but it's sort of a positive negative. It's you develop, you manufacture pigul. Pigul has its specific requirements. It's not just a carbon that went awry. That's a carbon puzzle. That's one thing, but pigul is a very specific product, so to speak. In fact, we find the lashon haratzah by pigul. Lo yiratzah will not be received by Hashem. We find the lashon reception, which rings like a successful carbon, which it isn't, of course, but it's similar to haratzah, kosher, to a properly processed carbon, which will be eaten properly. Here, it's going to process it in a way where, if it's now eaten, there's kares. So it's sort of producing an edible product, an edible in a negative sense, that if it's eaten, there's kares. So basically, pigul isn't just an absence of kashrus. Pigul is a status. It's a carbon processed in a very specific manner, which renders it pigul. Okay. Having said that, so now we can speculate. What happens if it's a pigul process? So you did the avodas till zrika. So you finished the akrava, but in a pigul fashion. What happens to MEILAH? Shall we say, well, it's possible, MEILAH is still there? Or shall we say, no, the akrava process has been completed. We have now processed this carbon. So although it's usher to eat and it's possible, but the MEILAH expires. Could you finish the akrava? Says Rav Gidol Marav, N-O. Pigul cannot remove the MEILAH in any way. Conversely, you have by kachim kalam, where there is no MEILAH until the zrika, until the akrava is finished, because at that point, the imur and the fats get designated for the mizbeach. Now, MEILAH gets activated. So by the completion of the akrava, by the zrika, the MEILAH gets activated. Likewise, if it's a pigul process, MEILAH will not be activated. MEILAH cannot activate or deactivate MEILAH. Zrika will not deactivate the MEILAH because of Kadashim, and likewise, or the MEILAH kachim kalam will not activate the MEILAH kachim kalam. We view it like a failed hakrava, and it cannot have any effect on the MEILAH status, one way or the other. Yosef Abaye was sitting, Gamar Lo Shmaiti was saying over this halacha. Isra Papa asked Abaye, really? So pigul cannot generate any MEILAH? So we shift to carbon toida, which has breads, right? So you did the shchita while the carbon was in the Beis HaMikdash properly, but the breads weren't alongside it, which are meant to be alongside it to get kedusha through the shchita of the carbon. It wasn't there. The bread was outside the wall. The bread. As halechem, the breads do not become kaddish. Likewise, if we did the shchita before the breads had crusted in the oven, so it's not yet considered bread status. Even if they all crusted except for one chutz machas men, so it will not be mekadosh the bread. Oh, now what about pigul? He's shechted with the intention of pigul. So in this case, Kaddish halechem, the lechem becomes kaddish. Says Tosfos, we can parallel from here. We can extrapolate that a pigul process can endow kedusha, can activate halachas. Likewise, in our case, it can activate the MEILAH. So just like in this case, it gives kedusha saguf to the breads, despite being a pigul process. Likewise, in our case, alma pigul ma'aslu de MEILAH. Apparently, pigul can generate MEILAH. On your kachim column, so Kashim Rav Gidon Rav says MEILAH is a non entity when it comes to MEILAH. Ishtik didn't have an answer. He also came to Rabbi Abba, and came to Rabbi Abba, he presented the story. Amarles, he says, I have a simple answer. Bizrika. Big difference. Rav Gidon Rav is talking that he finished the whole 4-step process, including the zrika, in a pigul manner. Well, that's not effective. But here by the breads, he didn't get to the zrika of pigul. He just did the shchita. Okay, at that point, it's not pigul yet, because only if you finish the process in a pigul mindset, as we explained before, it's a very specific process. You have to finish it with a pigul mindset. Here, he didn't get to that point. So since he did not culminate the pigul process, it's not really pigul yet. And therefore, you can understand that this shchita, despite having pigul elements to it, will be mekadesh the breads. Amalei Rav Ashlu Rav, really? So until you get to the zrika, it's not regarded as a pigul experience. And that explains why the shchita, pigul, can be mekadesh the breads. But Amar Ula, we have a quote from Ula which indicates that even before you finish the 4-step process, pigul is already present. Kaimetz pigul, shehel gam mizbeach. He talks about a mincha now. So he did the kmitza, he scooped out the handful of the material, and while doing so, he had a machshav of pigul and put it on the mizbeach. Shehel gam mizbeach, poka bigul mimenu. So although the kmitza was labeled as pigul, but once it starts burning on the mizbeach, the pigul status disappears. And the reason is because once it turns into mizbeach material, it sort of neutralizes that pigul element within it. I'm going to see in a minute, we have another part to this quote, which is the reason for this. He says, look, if the aktorah of the pigul, right, of the kaimetz of pigul, worry to have a machshavas pigul in the aktorah, it would render the whole mincha pigul, the shiraim, the leftovers, would be now considered shiraim of pigul. So we see that a haktorah, a placement and burning of the kaimetz pigul on mizbeach has validity, has status, considered akrava, to the extent that it could affect the whole mincha, make it pigul. So certainly regarding itself, it's considered haktorah, and since it's valued as a haktorah experience, the kmitza loses its pigul status, it's considered mizbeach material, and loses that, it neutralizes that pigul status. Okay, we're going to get to that in a minute. In any case, what do we see from here? That he's calling it pigul, just by way of the act of kmitza, which is really one of 4 steps of akrava, which parallel the 4 steps of a karban. Just like by a karban, we have 4 steps, by the mincha, we have 4 steps as well. We have the kmitza, which is the separation. It's like the shchita of a karban, which separates the blood from the animal. Here it's separating this scoop from the rest, and we have the rest of the steps until the haktara, which is like zrika. Kmitza is only tantamount to the first step, which is shchita, and still we're calling it pigul. You're telling me pigul only gets activated at the end of the 4th step process? Amalei, he says, we don't technically mean it's already pigul, which only happens at the end of the process. Isura means that it has that isur quality, the maisle pigul. It's the initiation of the isur / pigul process, which of course can only be completed upon the completion of the 4-step process. So kmitza begins the process. Amalei isur, it's an isur demaisi, which can develop udei pigul if and when he completes all 4 steps with that mindset. But of course, technically, there's no pigul yet. Likewise, by the shchita of the Torah, there's no pigul yet activated until way later. At this point, it's still premature, and therefore the shchita can activate kedusha on the bread. So Vaktani, we turn to the next stomach. Really, there's no pigul on this pigul. But in his own words, in Ula's own words, where he explains this halacha, he seems to indicate that it already has pigul status. The Ula himself concludes his halacha by explaining himself. I'll tell you the rationale, the basis of my halacha. How do I know that haktorah of a kaimetz pigul will neutralize the pigul element within it? Very simple. Im acherim meivil de pigul hu atzma lekolshke. If this kaimetz pigul, which is placed on the mizbeach, the haktorah of that kaimetz can generate pigul on others. What are the others? Rashi explains the sharayin, the leftovers, the material of the mincha, which he is representing. So, suppose he were to conclude the whole process in a pigul mindset, including the haktorah. What happens then? The entire mincha becomes pigul. Evidently. An act of haktorah on a kaimetz which is already pigul is still regarded as haktorah, has haktorah value to it. And that's why it's considered a conclusion of the process, which activates a full-blown pigul on the entire mincha. Hu atzma lekolshke. Would you think that the haktorah on this pigul material, on this kaimetz pigul, can benefit itself, for itself, meaning it's considered haktorah regarding the kaimetz itself as well, in which case it would neutralize the pigul element within it because it's considered mizbeach material? Now, the fact that Ula drew this parallel is the biggest indication that he is regarding the kaimetz as already having an element of pigul within it. Because as Taisus explains, if it only comes later, then the whole logic falls apart. What's he saying? He's saying if the haktorah on something which is already pigul can affect the rest, certainly can affect itself. Now, if the pigul only arrives through the haktorah as opposed to before the haktorah, then the whole argument seems to fall apart. Because you're not being mocked or something which was already pigul. Oh, so that confirms that in fact he considers it already pigul. Hence, the logic that follows. Again, the logic is, if by taking something which already has a pigul element and placing it on the mizbeach, that haktorah is considered valid to the extent that it can do things. It can, if he has that pigul machshava during that haktorah can actually affect the whole mincha. It's considered a conclusion of the mincha hakrava process. Certainly, it can benefit itself. It's considered an haktorah that will neutralize the pigul element within itself, which preceded that haktorah. So clearly, he's indicating there's a degree of pigul. There's an element of pigul within this kaimetz that precedes the haktorah. How? Evidently, the kmitza itself makes it pigul. No, he doesn't mean that there's a full-blown pigul. There's a certain degree of pigul, a start of pigul. Hanami, here too, he meant isur. There's an isur element of maisi, which can theoretically come to, can generate, can develop with a pigul if, in fact, he completes all four steps, including the haktorah, with a pigul mindset. And likewise by the karban. A complete pigul only happens through zrika, which is the completion of the four-step process. But merely the shechita, like the shechita of the Taitel Shem pigul, that's not technically pigul. And that explains why it could do things that could make kedusha happen on the bread. Okay, now another kash on Rav Gid Lamarav, who teaches us that the pigul process, the complete pigul process, despite manufacturing some sort of element of edibility in the carbon, albeit a negative one, don't think it can have any effect on the MEILAH status of that carbon, whether by kachim kadashim to deactivate the MEILAH or by kachim kalam to activate the MEILAH element. I have a kasha on that second point. Really? People cannot activate MEILAH on kachim kalam? I have a question. Ilfa teaches us back in Zvachim. So as explained, pigul will only happen if that was the exclusive mindset. But let's say he mixed in other plans, aside from chutz l'zmanai, the wrong time in mind, he also had chutz l'mkaima in mind. I'm going to do it in a different place. That interferes with the pigul process from developing. But this is machlekes. Let's say he had machshava of zman, which is pigul, before machshavas of makom. Rabbi Yehuda says the machshava of zman, which is pigul, gets established and preempts any other machshavas. So machshavas of makom does not interfere with the pigul developing into pigul. Chacham say no. The fact is, he had other issues there that disrupts the pigul process from happening. Now we're talking within the same avodah, or in two separate avodas. One was done l'shem pigul, one was done l'shem chutz l'mkaimai. V'amar Ilfa explains machlokes b'shtei avodas. When does Rabbi Yehuda say that if the machshava pigul was first, it gets established and preempts any interference? Machlokes b'shtei avodas, that's when it's two separate steps. Kigoin, the Amar, for instance, in the Shechita itself, we can split it into two. There are two simanim, right? The windpipe and the food pipe, and he said like this: the first siman, he shech l'chus zmani, which is pigul. The second chutz l'mkaimai. So the pigul has already established itself because it was separate, distinct. But if it's all in the same step, all agree it's a mixed up machshavas, and the pigul hasn't had the opportunity to establish itself. So they cancel each other out, there's no pigul. What do we see from here? If we say that according to Rabbi Yehuda, the machshav of pigul that he had during that one siman activates the pigul process, apparently it is very considerate pigul, because if it's just sort of developing in the pigul and not really considered full-fledged pigul, then who cares that he was first? The fact is, before he got a chance to really get activated, the pigul, he came in with another machshav chutz l'mkaimai that interferes. So what do we see? The shem pigul, the pigul status, is already there from the get-go, even before he completes the full akrava, even before he gets to the zrika. That's a kasha on Rav Gidol Marav, who says, a kasha on what we said before, that the pigul only gets really activated at the very end. Says the Gemara Chanami, well, here as well he has to wait until there's Rika, but l'chizarik tigla milsa, l'mafreya. Sure, at this point it's still potential, still pending. But when he gets to this Rika, when he gets to the finish line, tigla milsa l'mafreya gets revealed retroactively. Which one got established? Which one got activated? So true, it starts by the shechita, but it needs to wait until it's fully complete, until the zrika happens, for it to be activated retroactively. Rabbi the whole, since he had that in mind first, that gets established and knocks out the other machshav. Iba avodah achas, ib'shtei avodas, whether we're speaking it's within the same avodah, both thoughts, or in two different avodas, depending on different ways of understanding the machlekes here. So truthfully, full-blown pigul only happens upon completion of the process. So then, back to the question of the Toida. He had the Meshchita with pigul in mind. So, we sort of allayed the concern of pigul because it's not yet activated until the zrika. So at this point, it's still benign. What do you mean? But then when the zrika happens, ad zorik, so retroactively, we're going to discover that pigul was already there from the shechita, right? If we say this retroactive formula over here, we say it there too. So back to the question: how could that shechita's pigul be mekadosh the bread if it's a shechita of pigul? True. It's not active yet, but later on it will be activated retroactively. Says the Gemara, you're right. Whatever meant, a shechita of pigul can be mekadosh the bread in a positive sense. My Kodesh, when we said Kodesh, the bread li pasal, the by Sreifa, in a negative sense. It makes it Kodesh to the extent that it's Kachim Sum, has to be burnt. But it's not going to give it full Kedusha. And likewise, regarding MEILAH, it's not going to have the full effect regarding activating or deactivating MEILAH as well. Perhaps we can support Rav Gidl's concept from a brisa. Rav Gidl, who says that Zrikas Pigel cannot have any say regarding MEILAH, not regarding deactivating MEILAH and Kachim Kalim, or activating MEILAH regarding Kachim Kachim. We have a brisa. Let me say it. If it's Pigel, MEILAH is going to stay on. Not going to expire. Apparently speaking, even after the Zrika. But if it's a Zrika's Pigel, it will not deactivate the MEILAH. That's a raya. It's a raya to Rav Gidl. Lord, no, we're talking there was no Zrika done. Well, if there's no Zrika, then obviously there's Pigel. If you hadn't done the Zrika, why even discuss this? At Loilam to Zarek. So clearly there was Zrika. But it's not going to support Rav Gidl. True, it says that a Zrika of Pigel will not remove the MEILAH, but we're talking about an Oilah, whose MEILAH is ever present. We're talking about an Oilah. We're talking about Oilah Pshita. Obviously, the Gavaya, it's cool, it's completely meant for the Mizbech. Of course, it's MEILAH. Why even discuss that? Even a regular, conventional, kosher Oilah that had no Pigel issues, the MEILAH stays on all the time. So why even discuss that? We turn to Talmud Bavli. Furthermore, the Tani Sefer, look at the second part of the brisa, which will prove to us that we're not talking about an oil, we're talking about a regular kachim like a chatas. Lon dama. Let's say the blood, instead of being processed properly, it was left overnight, became puzzle. Even if you went ahead and did zrika with that blood, MEILAH is still there. Why? Because it was an improper zrika. And the Gemara is drawing a parallel, assuming that a Zrikas Pigel will have similar non-effect. So this works very well if we're talking about a chatas. And the point of Bryce is, even though typically by a chatas, the Zrika does deactivate MEILAH, but not in this case, where it was Zrika Psula. But if we're talking about Oilah, Tzrichla, Meimar, why even discuss it? Of course it's MEILAH, until the very end. You're right, you have a point. Seifa, part B of the Brisa, Vadai, Misayali, certainly, is a raya to Rav Gidl Marav. We see that an improper zrika, done with blood that had been left overnight, doesn't work. And assumingly, a zrika's pigel doesn't either work to remove the MEILAH. Reishamai. But regarding the raya from the first part of the Brisa, is that really a proof to Rav Gidl? Shall we say Hoyel, Neima Hoyel Masayel Seifa? Since the second part of the Brisa supports him, Misayeli Nami Reisha, the Reisha will also support him. That evidently we're talking about a chatas, which typically loses its MEILAH upon Zrika, but since it's Zrika's Pigel will not vacate the MEILAH, it's a right of Gidl. Says the Gemara, or actually, Seifa Vada Mesayele? Some learn that it's a kasha. Hold it. Is it really a right even from the Seifa? I'm not so sure anymore. True, it says that the Zrika on the blood that had left overnight doesn't deactivate MEILAH. But maybe Pigel is different. Says more why? What's the difference? Maishna, why would there be any difference? Sure, it's a right of Gidl. Improper Zrika doesn't work. Well, it's not so simple. You can draw a line between the two cases. How long did the cover be a daim? In the case of the Brisa, where it was left overnight. So he sort of actively made it possible. He sort of neglected it, let it stay overnight. Zrika, perhaps in that case there's a penalty in the Rabbanan that the Zrika will not benefit the Korban to vacate the MEILAH. But Machshava, but in the case of Pigel, of Gidl's case, was just a Machshava. So relative to Lina, it's just a sort of like a passive type of infraction. The Loy Kav B'Yadayim, which wasn't done actively, it wasn't an active interference. So perhaps in that case, the Chacham will not going to penalize him, and Mahani Zrika, the Zrika perhaps can work to remove the MEILAH. So we thought we had a raya, which didn't really pan out. Perhaps from the next price, Mesayele would be a writer of Gidol. On both accounts. Again, Rav Gidol teaches us that the Zrika of Pigel cannot A, activate MEILAH on Kachim Kalam, and B, deactivate MEILAH from Kachim Kachim. Ha Pigel beKachim Kachim Alam boy. So the carbon went through a Pigel process. MEILAH is still there. Let's assume, even if the full process was completed, but since it was Pigel, it doesn't deactivate the MEILAH. Let's assume, even though the Zorak did Zrika, but a Zrika's Pigel does not deactivate the Pigel. It's a writer of Gidol who says likewise. No, we're talking before Zrika. Really? But let's say he proceeded with this Zrika. You mean to say there's no MEILAH, even though it was Pigel? If that's the case, I might tell you safer. The Brisa was looking for a contrast. Brisa is looking to present a case where MEILAH gets deactivated. And in doing so, the Brisa had to look for a different type of case, switch tracks to Kachim Kalim. I'm not going to say, but why does the Brisa have to continue? Kachim Kalim, ein moyalan boy. So if it was a Pigel process applied to Kachim Kalim, don't think it will activate the MEILAH. So why do we have to go to Kachim Kalim to find the case where there's no MEILAH? Lift like Bereisha could have split the Reisha itself, meaning by Kachim Kadashim. But listen, I teach us like this. It depends when. Pigel process, well, Lefnei Zrika moyalan boy. So if it's still before the Zrika, MEILAH is still there, right? Because MEILAH only gets vacated upon completion of the whole process. Lachas Zrika in Malam after Zrika, MEILAH gets vacated despite being Pigel. If in fact it's true, why didn't the Brisa just focus on Kachim Kachim and find that distinction? You have a point. The second part of the Brisa is clearly in support of Gidol. It clearly says that a Pigel process will not activate MEILAH on Kachim Kalim, which is a second pointer of Gidol, right? So that's pretty clear. But regarding the first question, Zrika's Pigel on Kachim Kachim, does it deactivate the Pigel? That's not clear. Lema, perhaps you can suggest, Hoyel Mesayele Seifa, Mesayele Namiresha, just as we have a proof to Rav Gidol. Rav Gidol's second point from the Seifa of the Brisa. Likewise, you have to support his first point from the first part of the Brisa, from the fact that the Brisa did not teach that the Zrika's Pigel Kachim Kachim vacates the MEILAH. Is that an indication that in fact it doesn't? Says the word, it's not so simple. Maybe really it would vacate the MEILAH, unlike Rav Gidol. The reason why the Brisa skipped over the Kachim Kalim because it's a more clear-cut halacha. Kachim Kalim psikale. And that's why Brisa chose to use the Kachim Kalim as an example for this halacha. That the Pigel process will never endow it with MEILAH. Hachalei psikale, regarding Kachim Kachim, wasn't a clear-cut topic because, as Tosfos explains, although in a typical situation, perhaps Zrika's Pigel will deactivate the MEILAH, let's say by a chatas, by an asham, but in some instances, MEILAH never leaves the carbon. We have an example of Kachim Kalim where the MEILAH stays throughout, like an oila. So it's not such a clear-cut case to speak of, so he wanted to sort of shy away and speak about something clear-cut, straightforward. And that's why he cited the case of Kachim Kalim to bring out the halacha that a Zrika's Pigel will in fact end up with a non-MEILAH situation. But again, who's to say that by Kachim Kachim a Zrika's Pigel can't remove the MEILAH? Perhaps it could. Unlike Rav Gidol. So bottom line, Rav Gidol teaches us 2 points about Zrika's Pigel. Number one, it cannot deactivate the MEILAH off the Kachim Kadashim. Number two, it cannot activate MEILAH on Kachim Kalim. We have a raya to item number 2 and not to item number 1. Tosfos asks, look, how do we differentiate if Zrika's Pigel is valueless in terms of MEILAH? So how could it work for one thing and not for the other? So he says, look, regarding the first item, we can we can understand that pigel does achieve a certain element of edibility. As we explained before, it's considered a matter on the carbon, albeit in a negative sense. And therefore we can understand how that zrika will be considered the completion of the process, and the MEILAH will expire. Whereas when it comes to kachim kalam, where you have to activate MEILAH through the zrika, we never find that this type of zrika's pigel has that ability to be mevarer chelik avaya, to designate what belongs to the mizbeach, the fats, the chalavim. We don't find that has the ability to do that, to elevate it to that status. In which case, in that sense, we do agree with Rav Gidel. Okay, just for a quick summary, we began with the Machlekes Rabbah and Rav Yosef, Kachar Gadashim that was shecht in the wrong place in the Azara, in Durham instead of Tzafain. It's certainly possible. Now, what about him Olov? It's already on the Mizbeach. Rabbah says Yerdu, Rav Yosef says Lo Yerdu. Brought a right to Rav Yosef, which was a tiyuf to the Rabbah. On top of that, Rav Elazar has another question. Similar case, you have an oila which is meant for a private bama, which does not have the tzafin requirement that was imported into the bama's tzibor, and now it would need tzafin, but it wasn't. It was done b'darim. Shall we say im olu yerdu or olu lo yerdu? And the Gemara links it with the Machlekes Rabbah and Rav Yosef. So whichever position you assume on that, this will be an additional element of question. Whether or not you say olu yerdu, and we left that as teku. Okay, Rav Gidel and Rav teaches us 2 points regarding zrikas pigel. It cannot have any say in the matter regarding MEILAH. It cannot remove the MEILAH from kachim kadashim, nor can it activate on kachim kalam. You got to write to the kachim kalam piece, but not to the other point. Okay, pick it up tomorrow. All the best to you, and atzlacha Rabbah.